Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. After my parents chose my golden child brother, I built a new life that they couldn't touch. And now you want me to put my name on his loan? I asked, staring at the stack of papers my dad had slid across the dining table like we were finalizing a business deal instead of having Sunday roast. My hand was still wrapped around my fork, knuckles white. Mum's gravy had gone cold on my plate. My brother, Josh, sat there scrolling on his phone, not even pretending to be embarrassed, just bouncing his leg like we were wasting his time. It's not his loan, it's the family's, Dad said, like that somehow made it less insane. The bank just needs another guarantor. You're doing well now, Hannah.
You can help. My chest felt tight. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the hum of the fridge, the faint commentary of the footy match Dad had muted on TV. Sam, my partner, sat beside me with that careful neutral expression he uses when he's trying not to jump in on my behalf. You're asking me, I said slowly, to put my credit, my home, my entire financial future on the line for the brother who already burned through 2 bailouts and still thinks Uber Eats is a personality trait. Josh snorted. Relax, Hanny. It's just paperwork. You'll barely notice. Something in me snapped. It didn't happen all at once, this breaking away. It wasn't some dramatic, I'm running away and never coming back, teenager moment. It was 1,000 tiny cuts from the time we were kids, and I just kept adding band-aids until one day there wasn't any skin left to cover. Growing up, the script in our house was clear. Josh was the son, and the rest of us revolved around him. He was the talented one, the leader, the future of the family. I was reliable and sensible, which are just pretty words adults use when they've decided your job is to support everyone else. When I was 9 and he was 12, Dad turned the spare room into Josh's music studio because he decided to be a guitarist that week. He got an electric guitar, an amp, soundproof foam panels. I got told to be flexible and move my bookshelf into my already cramped bedroom. When I was 14, I came home trembling with excitement because I'd won a regional writing competition. Mum said, "That's lovely, darling," then 5 minutes later asked Josh how his soccer trials went. He hadn't even made the team, but we still went out for pizza to cheer him up. My certificate sat on the kitchen bench under a pile of mail until I quietly moved it to my room. In year 12, I got a scholarship offer from a uni in Melbourne for a double degree in communications and design. It would have taken a massive financial load off them. When I told my parents, Dad said, "Wow, that's impressive, love." Then added, "But you know it'd be a lot easier for us if you stayed close to home. We could really use you in the family business, and your brother will probably head off soon." Josh, who had scraped into a business degree after repeating a couple of subjects, was celebrated like a hero for sticking it out. They bought him a used car so he could get to uni. I took the bus, then the train, then walked because apparently you're so independent, Hannah. You manage. I used to think if I worked hard enough, they would see me. Not just as the backup singer in the family band, but as a person in my own right. So, I did the thing you're supposed to do. I stayed. I went to the local uni instead of Melbourne, studied marketing and design, and worked part-time at Dad's hardware store doing the social media, flyers, website, everything. I didn't get paid for it. "You're getting experience," he said. Josh, meanwhile, got paid to stand at the register and talk about crypto with any customer who was trapped there long enough. The turning point came when I was 23. Josh had one of his big idea phases and decided he wanted to start an online store selling imported gym gear. He convinced Dad to remortgage part of the house to give him a small $60,000 loan. "You're investing in your son's future," Mum said, eyes shining. We didn't have these opportunities at his age. Isn't it wonderful? When I, in the same week, asked if they'd consider loaning me $5,000 for a design course so I could move up at work, Dad sighed and said, "We're not made of money, love. You'll just have to save. Besides, you're good where you are." Good where I am. So I stayed good and quietly furious. I built a portfolio doing freebies for Dad's business, for Josh's half-baked startup, for Mom's friend's little side hustle. Every time I hinted at payment, I got, "Once the business takes off, we'll look after you." Spoiler. The business never took off. Josh got bored after a year. The site stayed up but rarely updated. Stock sat in our parents' garage. He blamed the market and supply chain issues and lack of support, as if his failure to fulfill orders on time was a global conspiracy and not him sleeping until noon. When I was 25, I got an offer from a mid-size agency in Brisbane. They'd seen my portfolio on Instagram, the one I built late at night doing freelance gigs for strangers on Fiverr while my family borrowed my skills for free, and wanted to bring me in as a junior designer. They offered a salary that made my stomach flip. Not crazy money, but more than I'd ever been paid. Real benefits. Real growth. I told my parents over dinner, expecting, I don't know, not a parade, but maybe, we're proud of you. Dad frowned. Brisbane? That's far. It's a 1-hour flight, I said. Mum's eyes filled with tears. You're really going to leave us? What about the store? What about Josh's new project? Josh barely looked up from his phone. She'll be back when she sees how expensive rent is.
I felt something in my chest twist.
I'm 25, I said. I can't keep waiting for my life to start until everyone else's plans are sorted. Dad put his fork down. You're overreacting. No one's saying you can't have a life. It would be nice if you thought about the family first. That was when I decided I had to leave. Not in that exact moment, but the decision crystallized. I could either spend the rest of my life being their reliable backup generator, or I could plug myself into something else entirely. So I went. Brisbane was hot and sticky and utterly liberating. I shared a shoebox apartment with a girl I met through a Facebook group, ate a lot of rice and canned tuna, and said yes to every project I could at the agency. I worked late because I wanted to, not because I was told my help was expected. My parents called, constantly at first. Mum, it's so quiet here without you. Your brother's never home. Dad, can you quickly fix this flyer for me? The sale ends tomorrow.
I help sometimes.
Other times I let the call go to voicemail. Josh never called. He texted twice, both variations of, "Hey, can you make me a logo for a new thing I'm doing?" 6 months in, I met Sam at a friend's birthday. He was quiet, funny, and actually listened when I talked about my work. Not just that's cute listening. Real listening. We started dating. He came to my first gallery show when I put some of my personal design work up in a group exhibition. He took pictures of me standing awkwardly next to my piece, printed one, and stuck it on our fridge when we eventually moved in together. "Look at you," he said, tapping the photo. "Tiny, deadly designer lady. We built a life. Nothing viral, nothing insane, just ours." I moved up at the agency, then started taking on bigger freelance clients. After a couple of years, I had enough work that going solo made sense. I quit the agency with my hand shaking and almost threw up afterward, but it was the right call. Hannah Lane's studio slowly became a thing. I worked with small businesses at first, then bigger ones. One day I walked past a bus stop and saw an ad I designed blown up on the glass. I stood there for a weirdly long time, just looking at it. No one turned to me and said, "You only got that because we helped you." It was mine. My work, my name on the invoice, my money in my bank account. My parents adjusted. Kind of. They liked telling people their daughter worked in marketing and was doing very well in the city. They also treated my success like something that just sort of happened, like I slipped and fell into it. When I bought a small apartment with Sam, a modest 2-bedroom in an older building, they were shocked. "How on earth did you save a deposit?" Mum asked, genuinely baffled. "By working," I said, "and not remortgaging my life for someone else's failed ideas." She winced. "That's not fair. Isn't it?" I thought. Meanwhile, Josh had pivoted from gym gear to a bar/burger place with a mate, which lasted 2 years before closing due to COVID, and also, from what I saw on social media, due to the fact that they drank more than they served. Each time he stumbled, my parents cushioned his fall with money and excuses. He just needs one good break, Dad would say. He's got such potential. I once stupidly said, a lot of people have potential. Only some of them actually do the work. Mom snapped, you've always been jealous of your brother. That hit me like a slap. I hung up the phone and cried harder than I had in years, not because I was jealous, but because if they were going to rewrite our entire history that blatantly, what chance did I ever have of being seen clearly?
So I pulled back.
Shorter calls, less visit pressure, more focus on my own life. Which brings us back to the dinner table and the stack of loan documents. Why can't the bank just use the house? I asked, though I already knew. They want more security, Dad said. We've already got that tied up with the last loan. This would just tidy everything up so your brother can restart properly. I barked out a laugh. Restart properly? You mean after the last restart properly? And the one before that? Josh finally put his phone down. Wow. Bitter much? Josh, Sam said quietly. You're asking your little sister to risk her home. That's not nothing. It's not a risk, Dad insisted. We never let it get that far. Family looks after family. I stared at him. When I asked you for $5,000 for a design course, you said you weren't made of money. That was different, he said, not even hesitating. This is keeping your brother afloat. He's got staff depending on him. A location. It's not some online class. Mum reached across the table, touching my hand. Sweetheart, you're in such a good position now. You can do this. And we'll remember it. When we're gone, you'll be taken care of. There it was. The implicit promise that whatever scraps of inheritance existed one day would make up for every unpaid invoice, every overlooked achievement, every time I'd been told, be the bigger person. I slid my hand out from under hers. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I'm not signing, I said. You could have heard a pin drop. Dad's jaw clenched. Don't be selfish, Hannah. Selfish. I repeated. You're asking me to risk losing the one thing in my life I built entirely without your help, to prop up Josh's third attempt at being a boss. You remortgaged the house for him.
Twice.
When have you ever taken a risk like that for me? Mum's eyes filled instantly. We've done so much for you both. How can you say that? Because it's true, I said, voice shaking. You paid for his car, his degree, his business ideas. You let him take over the house like it's his birthright. You handed me experience and exposure while I worked for free. When I got a scholarship, you guilted me into staying. When I moved and built something for myself, you took credit or acted confused, like it appeared out of nowhere. I felt Sam's hand rest gently on my back. This apartment, my business, my credit score? That's mine, I continued. I will not tie it to someone who has never once shown he respects my work or my boundaries. Josh scoffed. You think you're so much better than us now, huh? Just because you moved to the city and made some dumb logos. Sam's voice was calm but steel. You don't get to talk to her like that. My dad slammed his palm on the table. Enough. This is getting out of hand. You help your family or you don't. If you walk away from this, Hannah, don't come crying to us when you need something. The sick joke was that I had never come crying to them. And yet here they were, furious that I wouldn't let them yank down the scaffolding of my life to shore up the crumbling monument of Josh's. I pushed my chair back. My legs felt like jelly, but I stood. I'm not signing, I repeated. And if the price of that is that you see me as selfish, then that's a price I can live with. I looked at Mum. I love you, but I won't let you use that love as collateral. Then I picked up my bag, looked at Sam, and said, We're going. He stood without hesitation. We walked out to the soundtrack of my mother sobbing and my brother muttering, Unbelievable, and my dad saying, Don't bother coming back till you've grown up. In the car, I shook so hard I dropped my keys twice before getting them in the ignition. Sam took them gently from my hands. Let me drive, he said. I stared out the window as we pulled away from the house I grew up in, feeling hollow and weirdly clear at the same time. This was what it looked like, I realized, to protect the life I'd built from people who believed they were entitled to it. And God, did it hurt. Stepping out of narrator mode for a minute, this whole situation is an absolute masterclass in golden child dynamics and how quietly destructive they can be. Hannah isn't asking for a parade. She's asking not to be volunteered as collateral damage. For years, she's been the responsible one, which in many families translates to the one we lean on until they collapse. She studies, she works, she builds a career from nothing, and her parents treat that as some naturally occurring resource they can tap whenever Joshua the son needs extra light. Josh, meanwhile, is he's just finding himself brother rolled into one. Serial entrepreneur with no follow-through, perpetually one good break away, cushioned from consequences by parents who confuse enabling with love. The wild part is how familiar this all feels. The remortgaged house, the unpaid emotional invoices, the slogan of family helps family that somehow only runs in one direction. Hannah's saying no isn't cruelty. It's self-defense. She's not asking them to cut Josh off. She's refusing to let them drag her under with him. That's the part her parents can't stomach because it exposes the uncomfortable truth. They've built an entire family system on the assumption that Hannah will always bend. When she doesn't, the whole structure creaks. What she does at that dinner is risky and incredibly brave. She doesn't scream. She doesn't throw a drink. She just calmly refuses to be the guarantor for anyone's dysfunction anymore. It's not just a legal boundary. It's an emotional one. And the fact that her dad responds with "don't come crying to us" tells you exactly how often he's actually seen her as someone who could cry to him in the first place.
All right.
Deep breath. Because life does roll on after you walk out of the childhood home. Update about 10 months later. Hey again. A bunch has happened since the loan papers at dinner saga, so here's the long, messy update. First, I didn't sign. That hasn't changed. 2 weeks after that dinner, I got a text from Dad that said, "We sorted the loan."
Don't worry about it.
I honestly felt more uneasy than relieved. If they'd found another guarantor, who? If they'd convinced the bank somehow, how? I tried calling Mom. She dodged the question with, "It's handled, darling. Let's not dwell." I backed off. I'd made my boundary. I couldn't control how they rearranged the deck chairs on the Titanic afterward. Contact cooled. We went from weekly calls to occasional texts. Mum sent the odd "love you" message with photos of the dog. Dad mostly stayed silent. Josh posted Instagram stories complaining about fake people who don't support the hustle, which made me roll my eyes so hard I nearly saw my brain. Meanwhile, my life kept going. Hannah Lane's studio had its best year yet. I took on a big retainer client, hired a part-time assistant, and finally stopped waking up at 3 a.m. wondering if this month would be the one everything fell apart. Sam and I started doing little weekend trips. We built routines: Friday night dumplings, Sunday morning markets, movie marathons on rainy days. It sounds small, maybe, but after a childhood where my schedule was shaped around Josh's games and Dad's business and Mum's moods, designing my own life felt quietly revolutionary. Then, in late winter, everything broke at once.
It was a Wednesday.
I was between client calls when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Something told me to. "Is this Hannah Lane?" An unfamiliar male voice asked. "Yes. This is Ryan from Westfield and Company. I'm your parents' financial advisor. We met once briefly. You probably don't remember." My stomach dropped. "Is everything okay?" He hesitated. "I'm not really supposed to discuss their details without permission, but your mother asked me to call you. They're under a lot of stress." I moved my cursor away from my open design file, brain already spinning worst-case scenarios. "What kind of stress?" He cleared his throat. "The bank has declined their latest restructuring request. They're in arrears on 2 loans secured against the house. If they can't make a significant payment within the next 90 days, repossession is likely." For a second, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. "So when Dad texted that the loan was sorted," I said slowly. "They used a private lender with very high interest," he said. "Short-term solution." Long term, not so much. Of course they had. I took a breath. Why are you calling me? Your mother wanted you to understand the seriousness of the situation, he said carefully. She mentioned you declining to assist previously. She's hoping you might reconsider, or at least come to a meeting to discuss options. Translation: now that the house itself was truly on the line, suddenly the daughter with the little design business looked less optional. I told him I'd think about it and hung up. Then I just sat there, fingers pressed to my temples, feeling that old, familiar tug-of-war between guilt and anger. They'd done exactly what I was afraid they'd do, put themselves further in debt to prop up Josh's failing ventures. Only this time, the safety net was shredding. That night, I told Sim everything. He listened, then said, "Okay. The question is, what kind of help can you give without destroying yourself?" We made a deal. I would go to one meeting. I would listen. I would not sign anything on the spot. And any support I offered had to come from a place of choice, not panic. So, a week later, I found myself back at my parents' dining table, but this time, it wasn't roast dinner. It was spreadsheets, statements, and a nervous-looking financial advisor in a suit. Mom looked like she'd aged 10 years in a few months. Dad's shoulders were hunched in a way I'd never seen before. Josh wasn't there. "Where's Josh?" I asked. Mom's mouth tightened. "Busy with the business." Ryan gently slid a folder toward me. "Here's the situation in simple terms," he began. Simple apparently meant 2 mortgages on the house, both behind on payments. A high-interest, short-term loan from a private lender tied to Josh's relaunch of the bar as a modern social experience hub. Credit card debt. 0 real savings. "If you have the capacity to contribute a lump sum, even a partial one," Ryan said, "we might be able to negotiate more favorable terms and prevent immediate action." Mom looked at me with watery eyes. "We wouldn't be asking if we weren't desperate, love." I swallowed. "How much are we talking?" He named a figure that made my throat close up. It wasn't impossible for me, not without wiping out my emergency fund and postponing some business investments, but it was huge. Dad bristled. "You're doing very well, Hannah. You've said so yourself." I looked at him. "I am doing well, because I've been careful. Because I learned to be terrified of debt watching you remortgage the house for one more chance for Josh." He flinched. Mom reached for my hand. "We'll pay you back," she said. "We always look after our own." I pulled my hand back. "No, you look after Josh. I learned a long time ago that I'm the one who's supposed to look after myself." Silence. Ryan stared at his documents like they contained the secrets of the universe. "I am willing to help," I said finally. "But not by throwing money into a black hole with Josh's name on it. And not by tying myself legally to any of this." Dad's jaw clenched. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," I replied, "that I will give you a one-time gift." Mom blinked. "A gift?"
Yes.
"Not a loan. A gift. An amount I decide, with no strings attached. You can use it to negotiate with the bank. After that, you and Josh decide whether you keep feeding his business or you start protecting yourselves." Dad stared at me. "That's insulting." "Is it?" I asked quietly. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're asking your daughter to risk her home so you can keep pretending your son is one big break away from success. I'm offering actual money without demanding control. That feels pretty generous." Mom burst into tears. "We didn't mean to put all this on you." "I know," I said, and I meant it. "You never mean to. It just happens because you keep choosing him and calling it love." In the end, I transferred an amount that hurt but didn't break me. They used it to get the bank to restructure one of the mortgages on less apocalyptic terms. The private lenders still demanded their pound of flesh. Josh had to sell his car and some equipment. From what I hear, the social experience hub quietly closed a couple of months later. Did Josh ever thank me? Not directly. Mom told me he said, "Figures she'd finally contribute when it benefits her image." I laughed when I heard that. The kind of laugh that has no humor in it. The real shift happened later, in a hospital. Dad had a mild heart attack in early summer. Not catastrophic, but scary enough to make everyone wobble. I flew down the next day.
Sam came with me.
At the hospital, Mum was pacing, wringing her hands. Josh was in the corner, scrolling on his phone. Some things never change. When I went in to see Dad, he looked smaller. Tubes, beeping machines, the whole cliché. "Hey," I said softly, pulling up a chair. He gave me a tired smile. "Hey, love." For a minute, we just sat. The TV in the corner was playing some daytime show on low volume. "You didn't have to come," he said finally.
I did, I said.
"You're still my dad." He looked at me for a long moment. "Ryan told me you could have given more," he said. I stiffened. "Okay." I asked him, Dad added quickly. He didn't offer.
Oh.
He sighed, staring at the ceiling. A younger version of me would have been angry. Would have called you ungrateful, selfish. I swallowed. Would have. He nodded slowly. "Lying here, I keep thinking about choices. The ones we made with you and Josh.
We always assumed you'd be fine.
You were the one who didn't need help." "I did," I said quietly. "I just learned not to ask." His eyes filled. "I know that now. Too late, maybe, but I see it." We sat with that for a moment. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I'm sorry we made you feel like second place in your own family." The apology landed somewhere deep and sore inside me. It didn't erase anything. It didn't magically make the loan attempts okay. But it was real.
"Thank you," I said.
He chuckled weakly. "Your brother's a good boy, but we did him no favors either, did we? Always picking him, bailing him out. We called it support, but maybe it was just fear. Fear he'd fail, and we'd have to admit we weren't perfect parents." I exhaled. "You still picked him over me." He nodded. "We did. And you still came."
"Of course I came," I said.
"You're still my dad." Something in his face softened. "You build a life we've got no claim on," he murmured. "You know that." "That was the point," I said, but I smiled a little.
"Good," he said.
"Keep it that way." Later, in the corridor, Josh cornered me near the vending machines. "So," he said, hands in his pockets. "Rich city sister swoops in again." I stared at him. "Again? When was the first time?" He shrugged. "Mum said you gave them a chunk of cash. Must be nice, having that lying around." "It wasn't lying around," I said. "I worked for it." He rolled his eyes. "We all work." "Do we?" I asked.
His jaw tightened.
"You think you're better than me?" "No," I said. "I think I'm better to myself than you are to yourself. And I think our parents should have been better to both of us." He snorted. "Look at you, armchair psychologist." "I'm not your therapist, Josh," I said. "But I am done being your backup plan." He opened his mouth, closed it, then walked away. "We're not close now. We might never be."
I've made my peace with that.
As for my parents, we're cautious, softer around the edges. Mum still slips into golden child mode sometimes, but she catches herself more. She started asking me about my work like she actually wants to understand it. She visited Brisbane and came to my studio, ran her hand over my big client mood boards and said, "You really did all this yourself, didn't you?" "Yes," I said. She nodded. "I'm proud of you." I believed her for the first time. I think the biggest shift, though, is internal. For years, some part of me was still trying to audition for the role of good daughter in their story. Now, I'm done auditioning. I'll show up because I choose to, not because I'm scared I'll be written out entirely. My life, the business, my relationship with Sam, our home, my friends, that's the world I built where their choices can't bulldoze everything overnight. They can visit. They can even be part of it if they learn how to treat it with respect. But they can't touch the foundations. Those are mine. Time to rate this cast like we're at a very emotionally fraught award show.
Hannah, up. Absolute MVP.
She doesn't start off fearless. She starts off conditioned, trained really, to be the one who manages, who doesn't need help, who keeps the machine running. The glow up isn't just financial, it's psychological. The girl who stayed for the sake of harmony becomes the woman who walks out of a lone signing ambush and later walks into a bank meeting with her spine intact. She's generous without erasing herself. The one-time gift is a masterstroke. It's compassion with guardrails. Josh, golden child brother, if Arrested Development were a person. Josh isn't cartoonishly evil. He's worse in some ways. Entitled, mildly talented, never forced to grow. He lives in a world where the hustle is more aesthetic than actual effort, and any pushback feels like a personal attack. It's tempting to hate him, but look at his environment. Every fall cushioned, every failure reframed as bad luck. He's a product of parents who confused protection with worship. That doesn't excuse his nastiness, but it does explain why responsibility feels foreign to him. Mum. Queen of emotional optics. She's ruled for decades by what will people think, and we have to support Josh. She weaponizes guilt almost reflexively. Tears, talk of family, vague promises of future inheritance. But she's also capable of growth. She calls the financial advisor. She asks Hannah to understand. She eventually walks into her daughter's studio and, for once, sees it as an achievement rather than a resource. She's probably the most likely to truly change slowly, in fits and starts. Dad. Classic old-school patriarch. House as legacy, son as heir, daughter as reliable understudy. His worst trait is the assumption that Hannah will be fine, which lets him ignore how often he's asked her to carry more than her share. The hospital scene, though, cracks the armor. His apology isn't flowery, but it's honest. We always assumed you'd be fine. That line lands like a confession and a verdict. He's late to the party, but at least he shows up. Josh versus reality. The bar/crypto/gym gear disaster cycle isn't just bad luck. It's a refusal to confront limits. The tragedy is that being chosen as the golden child actually stunted him. Without friction, he never developed grit. Hannah's no is possibly the most loving thing anyone's ever done for him because it's the first time the universe doesn't bend around his bad decisions. Overall verdict. This isn't a clean-cut good versus evil tale. It's about how family roles harden like concrete if no one questions them. Hannah's victory isn't that she saved her parents' house or fixed her brother. It's that she finally stopped auditioning for a part in their story and wrote her own. The new life she built isn't just financially untouchable, it's narratively untouchable. They don't get to decide what it means anymore.